Welcome back to another episode of the Lendr podcast. I'm Bryce Matheson, and as always, this episode is brought to you by Lendr. Lendr is a loan management software tool designed to help you with every aspect of your business, from origination to servicing to payoff. Lendr helps you with document generation, helps you with collecting monthly payments, dispersing monthly payments to your investors, taking in new loan applications, giving your borrowers a portal that they can log into, giving your investors a portal that they can log into. Pretty much every aspect of everything that you do inside of your lending business can be done and facilitated through Lendr. You can check that out by going to joinlendr.com. That's Lendr, joinlendr.com. Now, onto the episode. All right, you guys, happy 4th of July, or at least it's the 4th of July for me as I'm recording this. So chances are it will probably be after the 4th as you're listening to this, but still, happy Independence Day. Okay, this episode probably are some of my favorite, and it's been a little, I don't know, probably not that long, but it's been a few minutes since we've done an update video talking about where we're at with Lendr, some of the new features that we have already pushed out, some of the additional features that are coming, things like that. If you're on our mailing list, which I highly recommend, you'll get these in real time, kind of as they're released, or sometimes we'll do a bigger announcement. We will, announce everything in one fell swoop, but I still want to dive in a little bit more detail, some of these different items, because it's difficult to grasp the full magnitude of how these work or how they look or how they function just in a simple email. So that's what we're talking about today. We've got about 20-ish new features that we've added to Lendr, and so I want to break each one of those down and kind of go over each one of them individually. So first things first, we now have added a lifetime interest earned metric onto the investor portals. This is not necessarily like monumental by any stretch of the imagination, but it is still really nice to be able to just have an additional metric for your investors to look at when they log into their portal, mainly because it just, again, it instills confidence, but it also gets them excited. For example, say you've got an investor who's got, 50 grand or 100 grand with you. Chances are they're probably making anywhere from $700 to $1,000 per month in interest, assuming all the loans are performing and things like that. For a lot of people, that may not be the most exciting, but what's really exciting is when you log in and you see, whoa, I've made over $30,000 with this guy and I haven't had to do a single thing. So again, just one of those other metrics that's like, oh, this is actually working. If your investors are like, okay, they're just getting this slow trickle, it's cool when you log in and you get to see that metric. So that's now available immediately on all the investor portals. All your investors will see that when they log in, their lifetime aggregate total of all the interest that's been paid. Okay, next thing is we have added manual task creation, which also ties into some of the automations that I'll talk about in a second, but you can create different action items or task items for yourself or your team just by clicking on the little plus. So this is, again, not monumental by any stretch of the imagination, but there are oftentimes things that you'll want to be able to just remind yourself to do. For example, when a loan closes, I need to remind myself to go and mark the charges inside of Lendr as paid or not, or I need to update QuickBooks or whatever it is. And so now I can create these task list items that will automatically populate. And then when I log in, I'm reminded to do that. For example, one of the things that I always forget to do when a loan pays off is I forget to do the lien release or the satisfaction of mortgage. I don't know why I can't ever remember to do that, but now I have a checklist item that anytime a loan closes, it'll automatically show me this task list item, and I will never forget to do that ever again, which is really nice. Obviously, it just kind of helps with the professionalism of your business and everything, because you're like, oh yeah, I'm remembering to do these things. Operations don't get missed, step-by-step process. You got it. And on top of that, what's really cool is you can add different tasks for team members. This is only available if you have the Grow plan or higher, but say you've got a loan processor or a controller or different, individuals on your team, you can now assign different tasks to them, which is nice because you can also see there's a new report talking about like the time delay. So say you create a task for somebody, but it's not getting done in time, you now have visibility on how long it took for that person to complete that task. You can see overdue tasks, you can see pending tasks, like I said, the length of time it took for them to complete, all of that. So again, not like earth-shattering by any stretch of the imagination, but still a helpful thing inside of your lending business. Okay, these next two will probably only affect you if you're running a fund and you're running a fund through Lendr, but they're still good to know. So if you run a fund through Lendr, you can now see a fund overview and a performance page. And you can also optionally toggle this on or off for your investors to see if they want. So for example, you can see, okay, we have $5 million in our fund and it's secured by $7 million in collateral. And then from there, you can see the target yield, you can see the security coverage, you can see the individual project breakdown. And then if you want, and you want to give this to your investors so they can drill down even further, your investors can now click on any of the projects owned by the fund and see the details and see the pictures and the updates and the metrics and all that kind of stuff. So very cool. Again, if you don't want that, you can completely toggle it off so your investors don't see that. But for us, where we have a fund, that is really valuable. Second thing is we now have the ability to do mass fund payments and distributions through Lendr. So as an example, let's say you have, one investor who has $100,000 with you. We have another investor who has $250,000 with you and another investor with $500,000. The accrued interest for all of these different investors is obviously going to be different, but now it is all done from a singular page. So once per month, whatever day you specify, or if you want it to be quarterly or semi-annually or whatever you decide, you'll get a notification that says, hey, it's time to distribute earnings to your investors. And the system will go in and it'll look at the running total balance of their ledger and say, okay, he had $100,000 from this date to this date, and then he had $103,000 from this date to this date, and then he had $98,000 from this date to this date. The system automatically breaks those up into chunks and segments. It calculates the interest for all of that, and then we'll say, okay, this person is owed this much money. And then you literally click a button and say, yep, this looks good, approve, and then it will apply that to their ledger, and that's their interest earnings for the month or the quarter or whatever it is. So gone are the days of having to manually calculate and then apply to each individual ledger is just a single button. And you can also do it in one fell swoop. You can say, hey, I've got 20 investors. Yep, all these look good. And you say approve all, and then they all get emails. It adds it to everything. So it's just another one of those nice things. You click a button and it's done. Okay, here's another cool thing. So investor portals can now see payments and documents if you decide. So we've had some requests, for example, like you have an investor who maybe you're giving them an assignment. And so you want to be able to upload that assignment document to the loan file, but previously, your investors couldn't see that. So now you can enable a setting inside of Lendr where you can give your investors access to specific documents. Let's say there's something sensitive that you don't want them to see. Cool, you just toggle that one off or on, but they can see whatever documents you select, which honestly, I don't know that a lot of investors are that savvy and they're going in and they're looking at all the documents and the statements and things like that. But if you want them to, you can now specify yes or no, you can see that, and it pulls the documents directly from the loan file, which just makes things really easy. And then similarly, you can also have your investors see the payment breakdown now, whereas previously they couldn't. So you can see if a borrower has paid, if they have not paid, if it's pending, if it's processing, if it's late, failed, whatever. They can see all of that data directly through their portal. Very cool. Another one, which for me, this is huge because we do a lot of the document conversion and templates automatically for our Lendr customers, but we now have an import from Word button right inside of the document editor, which again, does not seem like that big of a thing, but it is huge because previously what we would do is we would copy all the text from a Word document, paste it, but then it wouldn't retain any of the formatting. So we'd have to go through and like center things and left justify and right justify and add tables and make this bold and italics and shift things different ways. And that was the most time consuming thing for myself and my team. It would just take forever to format everything properly. And so now there's a button, you say import from Word, you select your Word document, and it automatically imports that and it retains all the formatting. So say you have a 100-page document, done, easy. You click that button, it automatically imports it, and then you just add the necessary tags, save, and it's done in a couple minutes. Like humongous time saver for myself and my team. So this is a big one for us, maybe not so much for you guys, but it is there and it is available. You can use it if you would like. Okay, we've made some improvements to the loan application user interface and experience. And again, these are all kind of minor, right? But just like little by little, we're making things better and better and better. So it's so seamless and easy. So for example, if you're familiar with the loan application editor screen, there's a sidebar that has all of the different field types. So say you want to add a new question or, say like, what date do you want this loan to close by? What you would do is you would go up and you would find the date field and you would click and hold and you would drag it down into the loan application editor, let go, drop it, and it sits right there. And that's still how it works. But previously, if your loan application was really long and you want to grab a new field, you would be scrolling up and down to grab a new field and then drag it all the way down and then drop it and then scroll all the way up and click and hold and drag it all the way down and then drop it. And now those new fields on the left side in that sidebar, they will scroll with you, which is really nice. So you can scroll up and down and it'll just stay static on the screen, which again, little things, right? But it makes a big difference. The other thing that we added is say you want to add a new row to your loan application. Before, you would, again, only be able to drop the new fields at the bottom. So you'd have to drag, drop it at the bottom, and then you'd have to click and hold and then re-drag and put that field wherever you wanted. Whereas now there's a little hover state. So if you hover in between each one of those rows, there's a little line that appears with a plus mark. You click on that plus mark and it'll build a new row right there wherever you want it. So there's not this like drag, drop all over the place, which honestly, again, not a big deal, but typically when you're first setting up your loan application, you spend a lot of time in there. After it's done and set, you really don't go in there much. But again, just small, subtle improvements over and over and over, because our goal is to make the best loan management software there is. And so little by little, we're making all these improvements. Here's a quick and easy one. We have now added folders to your document templates. So if you only have 5 document templates, not a big deal, but what if you've got 25 or 30? You can now create different folders, drag and drop those into the folders, and then those folders will persist so that when you're selecting your document templates, you can say, okay, I'm in this folder and do this and grab this. So it's just easier to organize things. Or say you lend in multiple states and you have docs for Florida and Tennessee. You can now categorize those by folders. Just makes things a little bit easier and nicer for you. We also added a find and replace functionality inside of the document template editor. So say you put the wrong tag in 4 or 5 different places. Before, you would have to copy that into Word and then find and replace and then paste it back in. Just kind of annoying. Whereas now we've enabled that functionality directly in Lendr. Just find, replace, update the tag, and boom, you're done. Okay, I touched on this briefly before, but we now have added a task management report. This probably will not be as big a deal if you're on one of the lower plans, but on the Grow and higher plans, you will have this where, again, you can see all of the outstanding tasks and action items for your team members, and you can see if there's any delays or the average length of time it's taking for your team to complete certain tasks or items. So if you've got Sarah, and Sarah sucks, and she takes forever to get her stuff completed, cool. Now you can go in and say, okay, Sarah, why are you taking 6 days to complete this task when it should take 5 minutes at most? So again, that's kind of nice. It's a very colorful, interactive report, and you can find that under the report section. Okay, another one, which is huge, is the pending interest earnings. So let's say, for example, we have an investor and it's the month of April, and they've had all of these different loans that have paid, and they've received portions of payments for all of these loans that they're invested in. So you've got 123 Main Street, 246 Main Street, 456 Main Street. Say they make $100 from 123 Main Street, and they make $200 from 246 Main Street, and they make $300 from 456 Main Street. So they've got $600 in total interest accrued. But the problem is there was previously no way of knowing, okay, I owe my investor $600 because it's an aggregate with all of these different transactions on their ledger. Now what happens is the system will go and it'll aggregate and add up all of those different charges and say, okay, you now owe your investor Sam $600. And there's a couple different things that you can do from here. You can just click a button that says create payout, and it'll automatically disperse that to them if you're using our ACH processor. If you're not using our ACH processor, you can still do that with a Notcha file, which again, I'll talk about in just a second. But it's nice. It says, look, this is what you owe. And then what happens is as soon as you distribute those earnings, say the $600, it'll create a new line item or a new transaction that says, okay, you have a new earnings distribution. And that is now the new cutoff point. So now when the month of May comes around, it starts to add up all those transactions line by line, sums them together, and then it waits for another distribution transaction. And so it chunks it into different segments of time. And you can see, okay, I've paid Sam his $600 for April. This is the new amount that is owed for May, and the system just does that automatically. So again, nice to have feature. Okay, we have introduced Notcha files, which if you're not familiar with, a Notcha file is really just an ACH file. So it's the National Automated Clearinghouse Association, I believe is what that stands for. But a lot of banks, whether you're with Chase or Wells Fargo or even smaller credit unions, will allow you to upload what they call a Notcha file. And so it is a text file that says, okay, I want to give this dollar amount to this account and routing number, and I want to give this dollar amount to this account and routing number, and this dollar amount to this account and routing number. And so what you can do is if you don't want to use our ACH processor, which I do recommend because it's just easier, but if you don't want to and you don't want to pay the processing fees or whatever, you can go in and you can say, okay, on July 1st, I want to process all of these payments. And you go check. You check all the payments you want. And then there will be a button that says bulk actions. You click on that and you say generate Notcha file. And so when you click on that, it'll say, okay, where do you want these payments to go? What bank account, info, routing number, whatever. You put in all that information and you say generate Nacha file. What that does now is it'll kick out this ACH file, which you just drag and you drop it into your bank account. And then rather than processing those payments through Lendr, it will just process them directly through your bank and bypass our ACH processor. And you can do this both for debits and credits. So if you're pulling monthly payments from borrowers, you can generate a Nacha file for that. Or if you're paying out to your investors their interest earned, you can generate a Nacha file for that and bypass our system altogether. There's pros and cons on both sides, but I do like the Nacha file methodology just because the processing through my bank is a little bit faster than our current ACH processor, and also the fees are just a little bit lower, not like monumentally lower, but I just like to remove one more step from the process. Even though it's a little bit more manual, it's really not that difficult. If you want it to be 100% automated, use our processor, but it is there for you to use if you want. Previously, I was kind of against the use of Nacha files. I don't know why. It just kind of felt like dated and clunky. I will admit we've made it a little bit secondary, kind of behind the scenes of the application. It's there if you want it to, but it's not front and center, and it's not necessarily the default methodology. Like I said, I definitely prefer the ACH processing method, but again, it is there if you want it to. Okay. Next thing, which is humongous, this is maybe like the biggest announcement of everything, is our processing fees for the ACH processor have been significantly reduced, probably by about 70%. This has been a long time coming. We have used the same ACH processor for quite some time, but previously their monthly minimums were $100 a month. And then on top of that, you'd still be charged a per ACH transaction fee. And so let's say you're a smaller lender and you're only processing 3 payments per month. You would have that $100 a month minimum by the ACH processor, which basically means you're paying $33 per transaction, which is just insane. I realize transaction fees can add up, but that's just nuts. So we have been working with our ACH processor to get a special volume discount for our customers because, we do have so many customers on Lendr, and so they have approved a bulk discount, which is so nice. So what has happened now is the transactions have been reduced significantly and the monthly minimum has been reduced significantly as well. So now instead of $100 a month minimum, it's now $25 per month minimum. And there's a flat transaction fee of $1.50 as opposed to a percentage like it was before. So we have, just an example, we had a lender who was processing around $250,000 per month in monthly payments. And their processing bill was just stupid. It was exorbitant. It was like somewhere in the range of like $700 to $800, which, I realize you're processing a lot of payments, but that is a lot of money. And now with this new fee structure, they're probably down in like the $150 to $200 range, which is way better, way, way, way better. And just so you're aware, that monthly minimum is also including the transaction. So say, for example, you only process 2 transactions per month. Because they're $1.50 a piece, that would be $3. Because you're below that $25 threshold, you're going to get charged $25. Your break even is about 16 payments. And once you go above and do 17 payments at $1.50 a piece, then you're just charged incrementally. So it would be, instead of $25, it would be $26.50 or whatever that is. I think you get the idea there. But like I said, this is humongous. Most people will see about a 70% reduction in ACH fees. Again, this is kind of a special deal that we have worked out with our ACH processor because we do have so many customers onboarding and using Lendr, but that is available immediately and you're welcome to use it right away. So huge improvement. That's probably the most exciting thing about this entire episode and the new features is the reduction in fees. Okay, next one, we now have investor statements. This is something that we probably should have had before, but we kind of felt like it was on the back burner because we had investor portals and your investors could log in at any time and see their balances and projects and updates and things like that. We have found that some investors still are not that tech savvy and they don't log into their portals, and so they don't necessarily see all of the real-time updates. And so now what you can do is you can generate investor statements automatically, and there's a couple other settings that you can choose. So you can say, look, I want to generate investor statements for my investors and send them a statement, just a PDF statement via email once per month. And then you can also customize that and you can say, hey, I want this to also automatically upload to the investor portal. So they have kind of a running total of all of their investor statements, which is really nice. Like I said, if you don't use the investor portals, the statements are there. And the statements are totally customizable. So you can change your logo, you can change the colors, you can change the branding, you can change the font, you can change all the different things. You can change the wording in the footer. You can kind of make it your own. So if your, the Lendr default color is blue, but if your logo is orange and green or whatever it is, you can modify the investor statements to match your branding, which is now kind of nice. Okay, we've made automations smarter. So a lot of times people will use automations, particularly in their pipeline. So say you have a loan that's moving from underwriting to pre-closing or whatever. You can set up these different automations to do certain actions. And we talked about that more in the previous update episode, which you can go back and listen to if you would like. But you basically set up these different triggers as it moves through your pipeline. It can do certain things like send texts or emails or fire off a webhook or a Zapier integration or whatever have you. We've now made automations smarter. Say you have a trigger set up and you move a loan file from underwriting to pre-closing and you have it send a text to a borrower. Sometimes you're like, oh, I didn't mean to do that. And you move this from one column to another. What it will do is it will obviously send a text. But if you move it back and forth, as long as you do it within a 2-minute window, it's not going to refire that automation, resend the text, redo the things again. So you're not going to have necessarily like duplicate charges or duplicate alerts or duplicate tasks created. The system is now smart enough that like if there was an oops, you can drag it back temporarily and then move it back again and it won't refire those. So just kind of some nice enhancements there. You can now search by cross-collateral. So in the system, you have your loan file. Oftentimes, these loans will have cross-collateral. And so say you have a loan that's 123 Main Street, but inside of that loan, you're also cross-collateralizing 246 Main Street just to be able to give your borrowers some additional leverage or whatever it may be. Before, there was no way of seeing that inside of this loan, there's this other property that we're collateralizing. Now, inside of the search feature, you can see those cross-collateralized loans, which is really nice because you're like, I can't remember which loan this was on, but I can promise you that the address was 246 Main Street. You can now search for that address and it'll pull up the loan that it's referencing. So again, not a huge feature because a lot of people don't use cross-collateral, but it is there now if you want it. We have vastly improved the user interface for draw requests. So before, I wouldn't necessarily say it was bad at all, but now it's just a little bit prettier, a little bit nicer. There's now some progress bars. There's some graphs and some circles that show, this is 75% funded or whatever. A little bit more colorful. There's some like green progress bars when the borrower has drawn from all the different line items, just to make it a little bit more visually appealing and easier to see that certain things have been drawn from or not, or what's remaining, etc. Okay, you can also now import investors via CSV. I don't know why we didn't have this before. You could import borrowers and loans via CSV, but you couldn't do investors. It probably was just not a very highly requested thing, but now that is there. And so if you're onboarding to Lendr from a different loan management software or whatever, you can now just upload a CSV of all your investors and boom, that's done. We have added a charges report, which is really cool. It's very interactive, very pretty and colorful, which I like. I like seeing all the colors. And anyway, it now breaks down your charges, showing you how much you have earned across all of your loans, what charges are outstanding, waiting to be paid. You can see it broken down by charge type. So you can be like, okay, in the last whatever time period that I select, I've collected $100,000 in origination fees, but I still have $50,000 outstanding. And you can see broken down by extension fees and late fees and whatever. And then you can see it broken down by loan as well. So basically just the whole goal is to give people more information. The more data, the better, obviously. And so that now exists and is live whenever you're ready for it. This is a small one, but we have added notes directly on the pipeline view. So if you're using Lendr to add a lot of comments or notes inside the loan file, sometimes it was a little annoying because you would have to click into the loan to see those notes with the previous comments. And now there's a little like comment bubble on the pipeline, and you can quickly hover over that and see any previous comments. It'll show like the last 5 comments, I believe. And then if you click on that, it'll take you back to the comment section and you can add additional notes and things like that. So not a huge thing, but still just kind of a nice to have. We have now added draw request automated triggers. So inside of automations, previously there was only status changes for loans. So say when a loan changes from this status to this status, then you could fire an automation. We've now added different draw request statuses as triggers. So say, for example, you want to fire an automation when a draw request is submitted or when a draw request is approved or rejected or whatever, you can now fire off different automations based off of those triggers. And we're working on adding a lot of additional triggers for things like around late fees and payments and charges and and things like that. Those are all coming, but draw request triggers were kind of higher on that list. So we knocked those out first, and we'll come back and work on building out the other ones. This one is pretty big. We have added some enhancements to the loan payoff screen. So let's say, for example, you have a loan that you're working on, and over the last 6 months, you have given investors some payments, but they've missed some payments and they're owed some interest. You can now see all of that on the payoff screen. So you go to complete a loan, and you can now see, okay, I have paid Ed Smith $5,000, but his total interest owed across this entire loan is $6,000. So the system will automatically add up and say, hey, you owe Ed 6, but you've only paid him 5. We're going to give him that delta, and we're going to subtract it from your earnings. There's a little details button. It'll show you the breakdown of everything that you've paid all of your investors, how those numbers are calculated, and what is owed to them still, if anything at all. So just kind of some nice enhancements there. This was requested by one of our customers, Rick, if you're listening. Shout out to you. Thanks for shooting this over my way. We have made some changes to the way that we operate retirement accounts. So previously inside of Lendr, we would add, I'm sure you've seen if you're a Lendr user, basically what happens is any of the charges or fees or anything like that that are accrued on a loan are given to the lender. So obviously the investors will get their interest, and then anything that is left over will be attributed to the lender as yield spread. And now, because I kind of have a better understanding of prohibited transactions and what you can do and what you can't do when you're lending out of an IRA or 401k or a self-directed IRA or anything like this. Basically, it's a prohibited transaction to favor your retirement account or carve those up and give some over here and some there. Basically, if you're lending out of your retirement account, all of the fees and the interest and everything that's accrued has to go back into that retirement account. And so before, we didn't really have a good way of assigning yield spread to these different IRAs or 401k accounts. And now what you could do is if a specific investor is a retirement account that you personally own, you can edit that, and there's a little drop down that says advanced settings. You can go in there and specify, hey, this is a lender owned retirement account. And now what that'll do is any charges, any fees, any interest, whatever, will be given to the IRA as opposed to your lending entity. So this is kind of very, very niche and very specific if you're using retirement accounts inside of your lending business, but huge regardless. So if this is something you're looking for, that is now live and ready to go. Okay, last two things, and then I will end this episode. I promise, I know this is probably a little long-winded, but I think it's still very valuable. So last two things. We have made some huge enhancements to the loan opportunities section. So inside of Lendr, if you're not familiar, you can set up loan opportunities. And so say, for example, you have a loan application that comes in, it's $300,000. You're wanting to notify your investors, hey, I've got a new opportunity here that I want to notify or let you know about. And so what you can do is, previously we had this for a while, but now we've made it significantly better. So before, you would say, hey, this is my new loan opportunity, and that's about it. If people wanted to invest in it, they could, but that was about all you could do. There was no way of notifying your investors or sending out an automated email blast that says, hey, we've got a new loan opportunity that you can invest in. And so those are greatly improved. We've improved the AI descriptions that automatically get written. So essentially the description or the breakdown of the loan opportunity that your investors see, that is greatly improved via AI. We now have the ability to show a progress bar of, how funded this deal is. So let's say, again, $300,000 loan. Let's say you've got $200,000 in committed capital. You can show on this loan listing page that it's 66% funded. And it'll also show, hey, we've got 4 investors here. Do you want to be the 5th one? So it kind of creates this sense of urgency, which is really cool as you're getting people to invest in these opportunities. The other thing that we have now is we have a shareable URL or a link. So you can go onto your loan opportunities, click share link, and it'll copy a URL to your clipboard, and you can paste that wherever. So if you have somebody that you want to send a deal to, you can do that through that link, whether or not they're an investor with you. And then obviously if they want to invest with you, then they would become an investor. You get them onboarded, things like that. But it now almost eliminates the need to have an entirely separate website just to show your opportunities and your listings, because it's already done in Lendr. You just copy and share that link, and then any prospective investors can see, oh, he's got 3 different deals that I can invest in. I like this one. I'm going to say invest now. I'm going to put in $50,000 to this deal, and boom, they're done. So very cool. Okay, last but not least, we have made some enhancements, and this one is for Luke. Luke, shout out if you're listening. We've made some enhancements to now be able to search by tags. So inside of Lendr, you can add different tags to loans, but kind of an interesting use case for this one is to be able to, for example, say you have a portfolio loan. Say you're doing a $2 million loan and you're spreading it across 6 or 7 different properties. What you can do is you can have each one of those properties inside of Lendr as a sub loan if you'd like, and then you can tag them and say, okay, this is part of Jason's portfolio. And you can give all of those a tag that says Jason's portfolio. But now if you're like, I don't remember which loans were a part of Jason's portfolio, you now just go up to the search bar, you type Jason's portfolio, and it'll show, hey, these are all of the loans that have been tagged with this specific tag, and you can click on any of them. So again, just kind of more enhancements there. I think a lot of people kind of sleep on the search bar. The search bar is actually really powerful, and I use it all the time. So you can now search by tags, by cross collateral, by borrower, investor, loan, ID, you name it. So if you haven't used the search bar, it's really, really powerful, and we're always making enhancements to that. So be sure to check that out. Okay, that is a lot, but those are I want to say there are 20. Those are the 20 new features that we have released in Lendr. They are live now. They are ready for you to use right now. So if you haven't checked those out, please do so, and we will catch you next week on the Lendr podcast. Thanks for listening.